horizon meets the waterline, drifting on, catch the sun on the rocks with a wedge of light. I feel the waves rush up me, got some golden treasures hidden on the ocean, and a pearl of glitter. This is something that I can't forget. No, I can't forget. No, it's in my head, in my head, in my head. Can't forget, can't forget. No, it's in my head, in my head, in my head.
All right, everybody, welcome back. No, you turn off. Welcome back to another setup session with the Indycar IR18 for the iRacing's Indycar Road Open series. Essentially, it's the Verizon IndyCar series. They use ovals and road courses, and they just throw it into the road side of iRacing's disciplines, for the lack of a better place for it. So last week we had a really good race at I don't want to say good race. We had a decent race. We left a little bit on the table at Spa. We had a few weird, strange issues with the with a couple of the outlaps from one of the pit stops. I think I may have dropped a wheel or something like that. It really caused a lot of strange behavior in the car. So he probably would have got a podium if it hadn't been for several of those kinds of, I'll just call them mistakes, because I can't see where, I didn't save the replay, so I didn't look and see if I had dropped the wheel off or anything like that. But chances are it was my fault. So that's all. You know, you're coming on the outlaps on fresh tires and you're pushing a little too hard. You dip a tire and everything just, your ice cream goes to poop, as I like to say. So this week should be interesting. It's a short track, and this would actually be one of my first short tracks. I'm pretty sure it's one of my first short tracks in the Open Series, official series on iRacing. So God help us all. So stay out of trouble. But at any rate, it's good setup practice for what these cars like and what they need. So what we got going on here is we just came in, and let me go into full screen mode on iRacing. And short tracks are I love short tracks. Actually, short track race in real life. I love short track racing on iRacing. Whenever you can get into it with a good group of people into a room and have just a really fun short track race. Unfortunately, that does not always happen. But let's look over some of the things that I may not have mentioned ever before about doing setup testing, and several of the things that I may have even forgot to do up until now. All right, so there's two. Let's pull up the info screen here. All right, there's two methods of thought, and it depends on what you're trying to achieve. First, if you're going on a road course, or if maybe even an oval track that you haven't been to, and you have like a decent setup already that's relatively balanced, or if you just want to use the fixed or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But if you're gonna use a fixed, use like a medium or the high downforce options if they're there. If you're using like a tin top or something like that, just give something that's going to give you your most downforce, and set the track up in a testing session as cold as possible. So if you want to learn the track, learn best lines through corners and different things like that without having a lot of self spins and off tracks and all this other kind of stuff, that's how I do it. You set the track conditions as cold as possible, you get the most grip out of the tires, and you go learn the track. Awesome. So you learn the track, and now you want to set the car up. All right. You go out of the sim, and you reload the sim using the following criteria. I start off with the hottest track that you can possibly get. So I crank up the temperature, and no wind, because you don't want wind to affect the test. If you want humidity, you can do humidity. I don't really think that makes that much of a deal. If anything, I could think humidity would do would affect the perhaps the aerodynamics or the engine horsepower, the output of the engine. Because when you start really getting humid, you add moisture into the air, and you change the composition of the air. So, for lack of a better term that I can't pull out of my science books, but so there's that. So this is what we're doing, and it's tricky at night, because usually tracks at night are very, very cold. But one of the reasons why I like using very hot tracks even at night is because those track conditions amplify any imbalance in the car. So then that's due to lower grip. So if you have a slight oversteer condition during a 75 or maybe even an 85 degree track temp in partly cloudy skies or whatever, when you throw a lot of heat in the track and you take away all the clouds and you make the track as hot as possible, it is going to just highlight the setup imperfections in the car. So, like I said, use the coldest and most downforce configurations for learning a track, and then you switch over to the hottest conditions and the least amount of downforce for setups. I like to use the least amount of downforce, if you guys aren't aware, if you guys haven't followed, because the least amount of downforce means that you're going to focus pretty much naturally on getting the most mechanical grip out of the car as you possibly can. And then aerodynamics are on cars to assist and add to the mechanical grip. So aero grip is in addition to mechanical grip. So as you can see, here we are at Phoenix at night, and I had an old, you can see from season 2 of 2018 set up. I don't think I raced that race. I think it was just one of those times where I was just dipping my toe into this, and I was doing F1 or real racing. If this is season 2, chances are that was the beginning of the race season. So I was either stuck in the garage or I was back and forth going to racetracks. But the important thing here is the weather. So clear, not that it's at night, and the skybox doesn't really make a difference at night, whether it's clear, overcast, partly cloudy. I honestly just wanted to see some stars and maybe the moon, just because I want something to look at. And then track temperature is 90 degrees. No winds, no relative humidity. And some of the other things that you're going to see is track conditions. you're going to see it's 0. That's a different parameter that I don't really want to contend with at this point in the setup process. I just want a pure hot track, my car, and then if you really want to get funky down the road, if you have time, and this may be somewhere down the road, like after you have like a really good setup for this particular track, then you can go and you can say, all right, this is what it does at 15% usage, 50% usage, 75% usage, 100% usage. You can see where the fall off is and the effects that has on the car, and then you can go back into the setup and say, okay, for a long run speed, and I know at 50% fall or 50% track usage, car's gonna do this, and then at 75 that gets worse. So let's dial that out at the beginning and sacrifice a little bit of beginning handling for the overall balance of the car throughout a run, and especially later on into the race when the track is really, really rubbered up. So let's come in and take a look at this, and you see I've done just a tad bit of stuff from the original setup, but honest to God, it isn't a lot. But we'll go through this page here. I set both side tires, the cold starting pressure, the same. I always do, because the tires are a spring, and when you start having different tire pressures, then you start having different spring rates and things like that. Now, on the Indycar, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that the rear tires are of a larger diameter than the front tires. I'm almost positive. Don't absolutely quote me on that. iRacing doesn't put that information up on their car info screens. I wish they did, so you could be able to tell. But at any rate, I start here just as a baseline, and I adjust from there. But if you see, 32 to 50, so 42 is usually I know it's not going to be 32. Whenever I start setting these pressures, I know it's not going to be 32. And I definitely know it's not going to be 50. So, I mean, 42 is kind of in the middle, and I don't like, where'd you go? I don't like really starting in the middle. I like going from one to another. So, what did we say the top was? 50? 50. So, let's do 46. I'll say. So we know that we're starting at one end of the spectrum and we're going to work our way back down, and then on the left sides you kind of work from the other end of the spectrum and you work your way up. So we know it's not going to be 20, and what's the highest? 35. Okay, so on this side it was kind of the highest end of the spectrum. So let's just go 25. So that'll give us 10 degrees or 10 psi to play with. All right. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, the ballast forward, and I was just doing this in a different session, and I was playing with this, and you may not be able to feel this in the car, this adjustment, but I know in telemetry and when you come back and look at the tire temperatures that you're going to be able to see that there is a very big difference in the actual tire temps and where you start moving weight around and where it goes dynamically. So, for example, in the other car that I was testing with for potential wow, I haven't had caffeine yet today. I'm trying to cut back on the monsters, which is an absolute tragedy. If you could tell in the telemetry and different things like that. So it was a difference in I was doing this for another car for a potential league idea that I had, and I just wanted to get in that car and see, because I want it to be a fixed setup league, just so people don't have to worry about setups and things like that for a recreational fun kind of league. If, people are working on setups and stuff for for official series. But what happened was is that this ballast I kind of had neutral. Like the range on these goes from -20 to 40, and I think I was running at about 5, and I couldn't dial in enough weight dynamically to the right front, and I was burning up the right rear, or at least after a 10-lap run, I can tell that by the end of the stint, the right rear would be shredded. So I had actually maxed out the cross weight to send weight to the right front. So what you ended up doing is you start coming up on here and moving the ballast forward in the car as it is, and that way it'll already set up a little more weight to the front to send more weight to the right front tire as the car rolls over. And then you can start coming back down on the cross weight, which leads me to something else. In your setup process and things like that, if you find yourself chasing, say in my case, chasing a tire temperature or a handling characteristic that you want, and you are pegged at one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum on an adjustment, you know, like say you were -20 on your ballast, which is all the way in the back, which usually ends up being more of a it'll dial in more understeer, or I'm say oversteer for the ballast further back, and your cross weight in this car, it's measured by how many pounds go to the left front. So -75 means that there is more going to the right front than there is to the left front, off of 0. So negative goes to the right front. How that translates into other oval cars, that will be higher cross weight percentage. So like 51, 52, 53. And if you really wanted to, you can do the math. You know, you could total up all of this, take these two, divide, or I say take the sum of the right front and the left rear, divide that by the total, and then you'll have the percentage of for your cross weight. But if you find yourself, like I found myself at the absolute negative, it was like 300 and something. It was at the max. So that, and I was just barely getting the tire temperatures where I wanted them to be, and the dynamic weights where they were starting to get even. So like, okay, right there, you know that there's something inherently wrong with where you're headed as far as the setup goes, because the springs on that particular car, they weren't at their maximum anywhere. You know, like I could see, like if I was maxing out the right rear spring, and you know, I had to overcompensate with that with a lot of cross weight thrown to the right front so the balance goes properly. But that wasn't the case. So it came down between a relationship between how much ballast you had, I should say the position of the ballast, and the cross weight. So as I started moving the ballast forward, I could start bringing that cross weight back down into a more conventional range. So so there's that. That's a little something to think about. So I like to start off with steering offset of 0. And your steering pinion, that is really, it is a user preference kind of a thing. It just depends on your wheel and what kind of diameter wheel you have and what kind of feel you like in the car. But I like to start out in the middle because it is a short track, and with my steering wheel, like I don't want to be cranking the wheel over, you know, and dealing with all of those forces for however many laps this race is going to be at. But didn't even look. Okay, so you can see the nose weight here is 46.7%, minus 75 pounds to the left front. Okay, just real quick. If that was 0, all right, that would mean that there was the same amount of weight on the left front as there was to the right front. They would be equal. But since that's not the case, you have more weight going to the right front. And that's obviously not 75 pounds of weight, because you can do simple math and you can tell, like, that's no, maybe, yeah. Maybe I can't do simple math. 487 minus 412 equals 75. Oh, no caffeine, it sucks. So you can tell between the weight spread between the left front and the right front. So if it was 0, that would be 50% cross weight, and it would be a perfectly balanced car. And that is exactly kind of where you want it for most road courses, with some very few exceptions. So coming over here, there is no third springs, so the gap does not matter. The bar diameter is large. We use steel. Steel's stiffer than titanium. We'll just start off there. Or you know what? We can do this. Small, steel. Okay. That way, that kind of coincides with my philosophy of you start the ARB as close to neutral as possible. So, all right, we'll have a steel bar, but it'll be a smaller one, and the bar blade is right in the middle. And we'll start off with a little bit of a slower position of the drop link, which kind of dials back everything back into the middle. So if it was fast, it would dial in more understeer, but with the steel, we'll just dial it back. That's about as close to minimum as you're gonna, close to neutral as I think that you will probably get. The RB preload, I do like a little. Do like a little bit of preload, and I like to make them even, as even as possible. 8, 6, close. If you want, you can tweak it just a tad, so where you have a little more preload on entry than you do on exit. So, one way or the other. But I do like a little bit of preload dialed into the car, because if you start off neutral, you end up maybe rolling over a little bit more, or you're not sending the weight to the right front as soon as you could need. So that may lead to a little bit of dartiness on entry. So watch the corner weight here as we dial in more preload. You'll see it go up, okay, and you'll actually see the ride height go up too. And whenever we do the tutorial for ARBs and sway bars, you will see exactly why that happens. Just real quickly, in the how the sway bar is connected into the car, and the preload will actually work like as a bolt between the frame and to what the, I guess you could call it a bushing. You could call it, we use eye bolts, but how the sway bar goes through. Dirty minds, shut the hell up. The sway bar goes through that eye bolt, and then you move that eye bolt back up and down using a screw versus the frame rail. And as you dial that down, you actually lift the frame rail up. You actually spread those two apart, because this is connected to a bar. The bar goes through that hole, which is connected to the lower control arm of the car. So it's pressing against the ground. So you really can't move the bar down. What you do is you actually end up building in torque, because as you move that down, you start twisting the sway bar a little bit. But we'll get into that whenever we get into the tutorial for the ARBs. But just so you know, positive preload will dial in more weight to the right front of the car, and this is the same for any car that I know of. I have to triple check the NASCAR vehicles, but it may be opposite. I have to double check. But for the Indycar, IR18 and the DW12 and the old Indycar, this is how it works. So I'm not exactly 100% happy with the spring rates. I don't like even spring rates on the front of the cars, because you're not going to have even dynamic loading on the car, so there shouldn't be this. So back in the day, I don't know what the heck I was thinking. But I will tell you that we'll get to the caster. Well, I'm sorry. We'll get to the cambers once we get further into the tuning process. We'll take big swings at the cambers just to make sure that the contact patch is there and the proper temperature split between the inside and the outside tire temperatures in telemetry are where we want them to be. And I do believe that we came up with about 6 degrees of temperature change difference under load going through corners. But like I said, it may be different. That may be different based on the amount of banking that there is in the track. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into camber. But you really don't have to break it down into nuclear physics. You can use telemetry to just get the tires temperatures where they're relatively equal, probably within maybe 5 degrees difference, and then tweak back and forth, and then you write that down and like, hey, at the banking of this is the camber that it likes, and then you're done. Then you know whenever you go to another track that has that type of banking in the corner loads that, hey, that's what the thing likes. So like I said, it's a little bit of work up front, but once you get that work done, you build up your notebook a little bit, then you can just go back and refer to it. So as far as caster split goes, at a larger 1.5 oval or bigger, if we go to like Michigan or I think Auto Club's like 2 miles long too, or is that Chicagoland? It's like 2 miles, but whatever. If you go to a longer oval track, the caster split is not that critical. You can have a little bit, because the more caster split you have, the more the car wants to turn into the corner. And I found personally that I like, if I don't feel comfortable on corner entry, the rest of my corners just shot. So I like to start out with the small caster split, do the whole setup, and then start increasing that caster split to get the feel that I want in the car. And in the Indy cars, it's very, very important that the less you have to turn the wheel, the less tire scrub that you're going to have, and the faster you're going to go, because there's going to be a lot less rolling resistance in the drag between the tires and the asphalt, especially like a place like Indy. So there's that. We'll keep the toes. I'm not a big fan of these massive toe assists, I like to call them, because normally in a race car you want the front tires towed out and the rear tires towed in. But on Indy cars on ovals, what you do is you take the front tires and you do that, or wait, yeah, you do that, so they turn in more. And then the rear tires you do that, the front tires you do that, so they turn in a little bit more. But as a matter of fact, I think these things are backwards. No, that's right. Oh my God, I suck whenever I do not have any caffeine. But so negative toe in is toe out, so that is that, and then the back tires are opposite, so they go like that. So it's actually like you can see the car naturally wanting to turn through the corner. So I like a little bit. I don't like a lot, especially at the beginning of the setup process, because I want the car to turn as naturally as possible using normal suspension adjustments. But the big thing that we're going to do as soon as we get out there is we're going to check the ride heights and different things like that. The ride heights are going to be big. We're going to see exactly where we are as far as the aero in relationship to those ride heights. And when we do that, we're going to start dialing out downforce. And then we'll start putting it back in after we get the mechanical grip where we need it. The dampers are all 12s, 50-50 shocks. And then we'll start working on the one of the first things that we do is get the gearing right. And here's a huge reason why you have to get the gearing right. Because number one, first gear, you need to be able to launch on a start and a restart without spinning the tires and without the motor bogging. So you want a nice, crisp, controllable first gear. And then obviously sixth gear, you want that is kind of like your overdrive gear in the Indy cars, and like for passing down the straights. And then fifth gear, you want to go to downshift as you go through the corners. Fourth gear, if you need it, as the tires give up the ghost, as they say. But here's one of the big reasons why you want to set these gears up before anything else. If you remember, I'm a huge, almost fanatical differential setup person. If the diff ain't set up right, the rest of the car isn't going to be set up right. Period, dot, end of story, end paragraph, close the book, put it away. On oval tracks, Indycars run a full spool, which means that there's no rear locking differential in the car. That means that the drive shaft comes in, the right drive shaft comes in, the left drive shaft comes in into a solid piece of metal, and it's attached to the ring gear in the differential, and they turn at the exact same time, or at the exact same rate. Okay. If you don't get the gearing right, then how that differential, which is still going to transmit forces to each of those tires, even though that it's not locking or unlocking, you're not going to get the rear of the car steering as properly as possible. So, as I say, as optimized as possible. So you have to set the gears up first. And I haven't been here, but the big thing with that is you look at the pace car speed. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what the heck we got as far as the drivetrain. So 15/34ths, 108. And if I'm not mistaken, okay, if I am not 100% mistaken, the oh, this isn't the differential. Forget it. This is what I'm talking about. Okay. So it may be the same in these other gears. I don't know how the construction of an IndyCar transmission is, but you have, for this I know, especially in just a normal oval car, this will be the amount of teeth on the ring gear, and this will be the amount of teeth on the pinion gear. The pinion gear is the gear that's attached to the drive shaft. You know, if you ever change the universal joint on an older car, you have the drive shaft. It has a universal joint, then it has a yoke that goes into the rear pumpkin. Okay, the pinion gear is attached to the other side of that yoke, and then the ring gear is attached to, say, the spool or the locker, or I should say the locking differential and things like that. So the ring gear is a big gear like this. This looks like a ring, and the pinion gear is kind of like I don't even know what the heck that it would look like. It looked like an old German grenade is what it looks like, except it has gears at the end of it. So that's how you get the ratios. You divide the two. But so what we're going to do is going to see, let's see, 108 miles an hour on the see, right now it's pretty controllable because you can go mash down and it's not breaking the rear tires loose. But so let's come. We said 55 miles an hour. Let's get closer up here. So here we are, 55. Come here, 55. 55 miles an hour. 56, close enough. Coming to the start. Full mash. That's not bad. And we can come back and we can test it. We're not going to go down. We're not going to go to a taller gear. We're going to go to a shorter gear. And we're going to see if that's going to break the tires loose. And then we're going to take into consideration, just based on experience, of whether or not, take that cone, whether or not on a worn racetrack, if we stay out like on used tires, if that's going to break the rears loose. So where are we at here? Okay, so we can go to a shorter gear. Further up the list is shorter, further down the list is taller. So we're at 534. Let's go to 1434, and that'll take the speed from 108 down to 100. Let's see. We can still get full mash out of thing. Let's see, it'll start breaking those tires loose. All right, cool. So we know that that's going to happen. Easy, Bessie. Get down to the second gears. All right, so let's see how the launch is on a start or a restart, and see if the gains that we make here is worth having to be super careful coming out of the pits. Better drive, get a lot better light. Okay. Now, just out of morbid curiosity, let's go down one more. 95. All right. But here's something too. Let's just say, for example, 95 is just completely uncontrollable. But we want a little more than just that. Well, let's see where we are here. You can go to the final drive gear and go, all right, let's bump this down, because it's not that huge of a deal. You can tell if you did the math and divided these two together, you would tell like it's not that major deal. So what was that, 95? All right, so we don't want 95. Let's go and see what would happen if we would just dip this down a little bit. 95. All right, so it's the same damn thing in this particular case with this thing. So all right, so 100. So let's go see what 95 does, just out of curiosity. We know that it's going to kill coming out of the pits. And that shift shock is what that is called whenever you shift from a tall gear to from a shorter gear to a taller gear, and the car just goes, it snaps. That's called shift shock, and as long as the that actually isn't bad. And that has to do with the difference in two gears. If there's a lot of a difference, especially in shorter gears, where there's going to be a lot of torque being snapped around, then we have to make sure that those two gears are going to roll together, going back and forth, or else we're going to get that shift shock. It's going to bring some issues. So I like it. Now here's the thing. Here's where you start looking at some compromise in your gear selection. It's like, okay, so I got really good bite and drive coming off of a start or a restart. Outstanding. But I cannot get out of the pits well. There's a lot more uncertainty coming through the pits. So do I keep it like this, or because you can gain a lot of time, especially under green flag pit stops, if you can be a lot more aggressive coming out of the pits, without having to really keep feathering the throttle and different things like that. So, what will be the difference? Because coming out of the pits right here, adjust that second gear, but to be honest, I think the second gear is not that bad, all things considering, on a start and a restart. But that's another parameter that we have to look at. So, as of right now, I'm going to do that. Okay. And just from driving around the track, well, I'll show it to you so you can see what I'm talking about, and you don't have to just take my word for it. See, I can be a little more aggressive here, and with a lot less chance of the car snapping around or anything like that. So now let's start taking a look at fifth gear. car is going to handle like absolute poop. So let's just put that aside right now. Get a baseline 5th gear. Just tapping out 5th gear. Well, actually, we're not tapping out. We're up into the reds. So, okay, cool. So, there's that. Well, how's that going to be in the draft? And number 2, how's that going to be in the draft when you don't got any fuel left? And the car weighs less. You know, are you going to start hitting the revolution and things like that? Just might. So, taking those 2 things into consideration, and this is one of the big reasons why I like ghost racing, because, you know, like, for example, in this series, the main soft race is tonight. It's Monday nights, and I work 2 to 10, so I can't go. But if I didn't, and I wasn't quite sure about my setup, I'd go ghost race that. Then you can make sure that, hey, okay, my gearing's going to be okay, the handling's going to be okay as far as, you know, running solo stints like this or being in traffic, and seeing what the aero does to the car. You know, you can do that. So I like ghosting. I really, really do. Especially the top splits. Because you just see just how terrible you are. So, the 5th gear seems to be halfway decent. What would be the next shorter gear? 93 to 92. That, let's just take a peek. And then, like I said, in the Indycars, the 6th gear is usually an overdrive gear on ovals, because the torque of 5th gear, like I said, helps you get through the corners. And 6th gear is something you want just to keep the RPMs down and traffic. So you have to give you the straight later. So you're coming out, you have to shift down out here. Downshift. Okay. So, like I said, at the beginning, you know, if you're coming to a fresh track that you've never been to before, this stuff is tedious. All right, I'll admit it is absolutely tedious, but it is absolutely necessary. And as you can see, dropping down a little bit in 5th gear actually does help the time just a tad. And I can tell it does help the car rotate through the corners. You know, so. And on my own, I don't tap out until the end of the straightaway as it is. So this may help at the beginning of the run, and then I'll just have to shift a little bit more at the end of the run, and that's perfectly fine by me. So at the end of the run, you may have to come in just a little bit. Cool, so there's that. So at the beginning of this process here, we set up the the initial gear ratios. Seriously, I hope my fiance is appreciating the sacrifices I have to make with no caffeine. We're gonna do something else now. All right, so we're gonna stick in with the gears and stuff like that. So we're gonna come out here and we're gonna run through the gears and make sure that we hit each gear properly. So, and I'll explain to you as I go along. So there's first gear, second gear. So here how it bogged down a little bit, and that's one of the reasons why you have that shift shock, is because there's such a huge gap between the top of first gear and the bottom of second gear that it'll shock the thing. It'll shock the drivetrain. So okay, so we know that. We know second gear is a little too tall. So let's do that. Then you go out. And we'll see how this is coming out. All right. Okay, so a little less on the shift shock. So let's go back around for a restart. Second gear still may be just a tick too long or too tall. And why in God's name do we care about this? You know, what point does this have? It has to do with G-forces, believe it or not, and acceleration rates. As you accelerate, and your G-force and you measure the acceleration in G-forces. So you know you want the maximum amount of acceleration. So like I said, you measure that in G's. So if you have a G-force, the G-force is building up and your acceleration rate's building up, you kind of want to carry that with very minimal dips, because there was going to be a dip in your acceleration rate simply because the car has to shift. Okay, so you have to disengage the drivetrain and re-engage the drivetrain. Even for a split second, it stops the you could say like it trips up the acceleration of the car overall through all the gears. And this is especially important at a road course and things like that. So even on a short track like this, in my head, I'm thinking that this is also important because chances are there's going to be a lot of restarts. And if you're getting swamped because your gear ratios aren't right on every single restart, you're going to lose a lot of positions. You're going to have to work a shitload harder. So come down one more on second gear just to see how that works. And believe it or not, I like to use the lights. A little bit of an indication. The lower gears, as you shift, they usually stay down in the green further down here. But as you go taller, then they kind of. I'll show you in a second. You kind of work your way up the light ladder. But if you have a gear, you know, shift from shorter gear to taller gear, and those lights go all the way down and they go completely out, chances are that the next taller gear is too tall. You need to shorten it. But as you go through the gears like fourth, fifth, and sixth, the space between the gears that give you the constant acceleration will result in more lights being lit up. So that first to second wasn't on all that bad, but track here. Where am I at? Ugh, that gets me sick. Okay, so coming up 50, 55, 60, 55-ish. It's good. Maybe a tad too short. Maybe a tad too short. Okay. Because as you saw, the shift from first to second resulted in like 2 lights. The shift from second to third kind of resulted in 3 lights. The shift from third to fourth kind of resulted in like the 5th light being active, and then the shift from 4th to 5th ended up being further up the light ladder. So they seem to be a little too cattywampus. But 5th gear set, 1st gear set, so we're just going to adjust second. Did I say that needed be a little taller? I thought 3rd gear might need to be just a tad bit taller too. And you do 1 gear at a time. And I like doing this on full tires because chances are you're going to be on full tires on a restart or a start. Even though kind of before I was staying out, but that's just to rough it in, just to get the rough ideas where stuff is as far as gears. See that bog? I went too low. Or I went too tall on 3rd gear. So I'm not even gonna go any further. So 3rd gear does need shortened. Alright, and I'm pretty sure I made 4th gear taller, so we'll just leave that as it is. And another big thing on the road courses, when you start talking about gearing, you do want the gears to work well together, especially on downshifts. And that's about as good as we do with 3rd gear. 4th gear may be a little boggy, because you can hear it in the engine too. I don't know. I'll try even a shorter 3rd gear. Bring these two a little closer together between 2nd and 3rd. We may be right back to where we started again, but you have to experiment up and down just to see what's going to be the most optimal. Oh, I'm an idiot. Shit. yeah, so while I'm coming around, I'll expand on what I was talking about whenever I was talking about proper gear selection and road courses. When you downshift, if the gears aren't properly spaced out, you will have a hard time downshifting. The synchronizers won't work. So as you come under max braking and the car is decelerating and you have all that negative torque going through the drive shaft, the gears are going to have a harder time syncing up to go into the next gear, next tall gear. So that means it's going to script your braking distance. Okay. So it's super important on road courses to have your gear ratios spaced properly. This is going to change. The top end of our gears are going to change because two things. Number one, we're going to be changing the downforce on the car, which is going to change the amount of drag on the car, which is going to change the amount of top speed that we're going to get. Secondly, we're going to be changing and tuning the suspension so we actually get better handling, which means we're going to carry more more speed through the center of the corner, which is going to translate to more speed down the straightaways. So as those two things happen, less drag and carrying more speed down the straightaways, obviously we're going to need to change the top end of the gears, and then we'll have to come back and tweak. But if you remember from the tutorial setup that I did, the setup process, as one of the first things you have to do is you have to go through this and set up the proper gear ratios. So okay. So we're going to save this and update this to season 4. We're going to take a quick look here. When you look at these two, and here's a little important tip. When you look at all these tires, temperatures, and the wear and things like that, this is a result more of mechanical grip and not as much as aero grip. As long as you're within a reasonable range of your center of pressure down here, then the temperatures that you're going to get in your tires are going to be representative of how the car is mechanically set up. And obviously, like if you came down here and you cranked in, 30% nose weight, and you're like, well, the car is going to understeer aerodynamically, and then your tire temps are going to reflect that, so you're going to chase it, which is why I say that the relationship between the aerodynamic center of the car and the center of gravity of the car, the dynamic center of gravity, is essential, so you don't chase your tail. You want everything to work in conjunction with each other. So we can see that we are surprisingly ballpark close. However, the car does not like to turn. You can see later on in the run, as the tires heat up, the car will turn, but that's because you're getting a little bit more grip after 5 laps. You're getting more grip because the tires are coming up to temperature, and you're getting that. But after 15 laps, the car is going to just be knocking down the walls. So let's go into our handy dandy trusty telemetry. And let me make sure I come out of iRacing so you guys can see. Let's bring over some telemetry, change the workspace over to the IR18. It's just loading. Give it a second. Okay, so here we are. So let's load up that one. Okay, how many laps was that? 4 laps? Okay, awesome. So here we are. So right off the bat, let's look at the ride heights and see where we are as far as the ride heights are concerned. They actually look halfway decent. As in they're not dragging. That's the first and foremost, most important part. Make sure the damn things aren't dragging. So let's look at the average front ride height and the average rear ride height, and we're going to come back in here into iRacing and input those numbers in the aero calculator just to see where our balance is given the wing and wicker options and all the other kind of crap, and crap it and write that down. 426, 587. So we went a little over on that, and we'll go a little over on that, just to try and keep the rake the same. But I mean, if you really want to, you can come back in here and go, okay, am I above the average more, or am I below the average more? And it all looks to be about. Don't waste your time trying to grind your gears on these the minutia of that, because you'll waste a ton of time for a very little return on your investment. Okay, so 43% front downforce. That's where the aerodynamic center of the car is. So let's come back over into here and let's look at dynamic loading and see where we are going through the corners. Here's a very good question. What corner are we going to set this car up to be optimized through? Because A, the banking's different. B, you have different goals at the end of the following straightaway for each of these corners. So, for example, turns 1 and 2 have more banking than turns 3 and 4. Okay? Turns 1 and 2 lead to the longest straightaway. Okay? But turns 3 and 4 is where you are going to have more wear on your car because there is less banking and it's flatter part of the track, so you're going to have less squat and more sliding laterally across. Okay? So personally, and I want to be optimized to come back to start finish line, just in case I'm in a battle with somebody and I have to make sure I have the best handling car through that corner. And number 4, 8, whatever number I am on my talking points, turns 1 and 2 are going to be more forgiving as far as an imbalance because there's more banking there. So there's going to be more squat in the car down than there is laterally. So actually, there isn't more down than there is laterally. There is more down than there is laterally compared to turns 3 and 4. Bottom line is it's more forgiving. So you can be a little off through 1 and 2. So let's come over to 3 and 4. We're going to eliminate some of these things where we start going. You can see down here where the loads on the car start going away. So let's come back and make sure everything's relatively flat as far as these lines go, so we can get an accurate average through the corner. So as you can see, the corner is highlighted. So where are we at? 48.3% nose weight as far as where the center of gravity is concerned. And then you come back in here and you say 43%. So that is what, 5 percentage points of difference between the aerodynamic center and the center of gravity of the car. That, in my head, as far as, because these numbers are so close to one another, probably less than 200 pounds, that is where the understeer is coming from, the aerodynamic understeer, because the center of pressure is too far back from the center of gravity. You want them on a road course to be on a slow to medium speed road course with slow to medium corners, almost right on top of each other, the center of pressure just behind the center of gravity, maybe by a percentage point or less, never in front. So like if this said 48.3 and this said 49, that's bad. That's very, very bad, because when the aerodynamic center is in front of the center of gravity of a car, it tends to dial in inherent instability, and that instability wants to swap the car around. It literally wants to flip the car around backwards. I'm going to go off here, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to see if I can't find the. You can see all the crap that I look up. I'm a dork. Just find out. There was a little toy car that this guy had, and he put it in a wind tunnel, and it spun this little car around like you would not believe. And I really wish I could find it. That's Engineering Explained. He does a really good job of it, but this guy had a... Yeah, here it is. All right. So, just check this out, right?
Leaf blower, a set of straws to straighten the airflow.
He's British, so you know it's right.
Placed.
Let me turn this up.
The car is pivoted on a point about its center of gravity. The point rotates on a bearing so that it can rotate cleanly and freely.
Okay, so this is a model car. All right. And you can see where he put the center of gravity in the form of lead weight. He puts it over the rear axle. Okay. So the aerodynamic center is in front of the center of gravity. You saw what the car did. It spun around. This is just a little toy freaking car. All right. So watch what happens whenever he puts the aerodynamic center behind the center of gravity. As you can see, he puts the center of gravity line in front of the center of pressure. Alright, so does that make sense? There we go. So even backwards, the car wants to swap around forward. So like, this guy's a genius. I don't know who the heck you are. Doug McMillan? Yeah, Doug McMillan. Way to go, bro. Thanks for explaining it. So that is why it is massively important to have the center of pressure behind the center of gravity. That's why. Okay. So right now we see that we're further back. So what are we going to do? Okay. How do we move the center of pressure forward? Well, you can either dial in front arrow, just start cranking it in. Just give her. Or you can take away rear wing, which is also what we want to do, because we want to remove as much aerodynamic help that we have in the car so that we can focus on mechanical grip. So that's what we're going to do. So like I said, we were at 48.3. Let's start taking this away. 44. I don't want to go too crazy. Let's go 45.5. All right. So that's what, 2.5 percentage points. That's a lot, believe it or not. So we'll do that. So let's come back real quick and let's double check the. So we're good there. All right. So we're good on the skid plate and the ride heights and stuff. You can see that we do not scrape anywhere as far as ride heights go. And just so you know, on the I really, really wish that they would make this more simple, but they don't. The ride heights, and it's probably, the description is probably hidden by my overlay, but the ride height sensor on these cars are not where are not on the lowest portion of the car. So it's not like on the bottom of the tub. It's actually a measurement. Here, I'll read it to you. Distance from ground to a point on the chassis reference plane, the bottom of the chassis hub, projected to the rear wheel axis on center line of the car. A reading of 0 or negative ride height in telemetry while on track may not mean the chassis is hitting the ground, as it depends on attitude on the racetrack. So there you go. The ride heights that you see here are not necessarily something that you're going to look at to get the car as low as possible without scraping and seeing if you're scraping or not. So, okay. So I'm just going to leave this in windowed mode. So let's go back out here and see what we got going. That's really the only thing that we did. Using it. So you can see how that relationship between the aerodynamic center and the center of gravity, even a couple percentage points, has a massive impact on handling, because before we were right on the edge grip on the rear wheels, because we've taken the downforce off those rear wheels to the point where they can't handle the lateral load. Because we've taken the grip off. So what that tells me is that we went a little too far. So we went 43, we went up to 45.5. All right. Well, let's go down. That's a lot of change. 44.6 and 4003. I always like to look at that ratio and see. 3.916. Okay, 4.016. 3.916. Okay, so doing this option, adding wicker to move the front downforce back, is less efficient than moving using the wing. It's less efficient and it is less of an effect. So there, we'll move it back 1 percentage point. tire pressures, that could be a lot of different things. So we're right at the beginning of the setup process.
All right, buddy, we're doing fine, man. This will all work out.
No, it won't, Chad. We're screwed. Okay, 232. See, now we're pushing. And just out of curiosity. Okay, so now we know that we can dial in a little more. So 45.47 is way too much, and 44 is still giving us a little bit of aerodynamic understeer, because you can come in here and see that even though we are through the chassis oversteering, because the right rear wheel is more it's carrying more weight than the front, then that's how you know that the that it has a lot to do with aero. I'm gonna move this over here real quick, and I just want to take a quick look at the make sure I have the correct spring rates dialed into everything, and I don't. So great, I'm glad I double checked this. Since I'm going to start looking at the dynamic loading, I wanted to make sure I got this right. 2750. No, that's the right front. Yeah, 2750. There. Okay. So now that that's there, and we put in the correct springs in the car, or I should say in telemetry, we're still showing a lot of more dynamic weight going to the rear wheel, which could explain why center off the car wanted to swap ends so much. So what we can do is we can start trying to dial that a little bit out. So I never even looked and seen. Yeah, we're almost at the maximum of this. See, I don't like that. Even on a new track where you could probably get away with stiffer springs, because it's a brand new repave, and it should be a little smoother, and you don't need as much compliance in the springs as you normally would. I still don't like being slammed up against the limits of the adjustment. So we can see even like the left rear to the right front is still a lot. So let's just go crazy here and do that, and we'll put it back to 1.441. Okay, there we go. And maybe even a tweak more, because they're softer springs, so they're going to give more under the aerodynamic loading of the rear wing. And then the other thing that we're going to look at while we're doing this, because this first run through, we're going to look at stuff that's obviously not correct. So ride heights, get them ballpark, like we started off with the gear ratios, get those right. Like I said, make sure you're not scraping. Let's rough in a spring package. then we can take a look at the tires and let's see how they look going through the corner. So here we are going through this corner here. Ignore these pressures because these are for road courses. I'm going to increase the range here to give us oval courses as well. And I can show, as a matter of fact, I can show you exactly how much we can do that. So we're doing that. We're going to do manual scale, and we're going to come up to 60 psi, so you can see what that does right there. And then you can come in and you can add more color bands to all this. Okay, so that's what we're going to end up doing. But to be honest, you lose a lot of I don't want to say resolution, but I mean it's hard to see where the hell you fall in that versus that. So I think what may be the best option is to continue up here between optimal pressures road and optimal pressures oval, and just make new worksheets. Just add a new worksheet there, and just copy these. So like make tire temps oval, and then can you copy this? Oh yeah, you can. Duplicate. Whoop whoop. And then make oval and road, and then just adjust everything over here for that. So that's next on my agenda. See, that's how, if you looked at the tutorial that I did on telemetry, I explained like your workbook is going to evolve over time as you figure out better ways to do things, as you figure out pieces of information that you discover are more critical. You'll figure that shit out. So as of right now, we can just limit. It doesn't matter. We don't know what the optimal tire pressures are for Phoenix at night yet. That's one of the last things that we are going to do. So where are we? All right, so let's go. Like I said, we want to optimize turns 3 and 4. So let's look at the temperature spreads between all of our tires. So about 5 degrees there, about 4 degrees there, about 3 degrees on the left front, and then a little too much on the left rear. So you were talking like, what is that? 8? Yeah, 8 degrees. That may be a little too much of a spread to start with. So we'll come back in here, and so we're tilted out too much. Just a freaking hair. 52. Then bring that back up to 52. So you reset the right heights after all of your cambers, because as the tire, if this is the surface of the road and this is the tire, as you change this, it lifts up the car and it puts it back down, you know, and that's why you get different ride height changes. So you have to reset the ride heights. See. Let's go back out and let's check our new spring packages just to see what's going on. You should get better compliance coming out of it than you do. You get better compliance coming out of the pits because the rear springs aren't as stiff, which means if you hit any bump on the apron, it's not throwing the ass into the car up in the air. And we have a lot better compliance going to the corner. Even on the heat of something else that's way too timid. Too aggressive. That's okay. Too aggressive. But that's okay. You know, window mode, I'm only getting like 50 frames per second versus full screen where I'm getting like 200. nice 10-lap run in so I can see, get enough data so I can see what's causing that. But you just naturally want to push the car as hard as you can. Coming in hot. Okay, and as you can see, we're back up to pushing. I can't remember what those tire pressure or what those said at the beginning of this process, but we are where we are. So let's load in the new one. I hate when it does that. It'll split these two. I'll run into 2 or 3. And have to come over here and see which one had the most laps in it. Total laps 1. Total laps 1. It's like if you hit something, it resets everything. So 4. Really? Where's the longer one? Is there a longer one? Laps 8. Okay, there it is. Don't know why it does that. It's a weird thing with Motec. Well, let's come down here towards the last portion. All right. So as you can see, we brought that in a little more. It's about 10 degrees now, though, but we've raised the inside temperature of the tire. This is still Well, these are going to be changed because we changed the amount of squat that the ass end of the car has because we changed the springs. So this is going to be a little bit different, but so we'll have to revisit the cambers again. Let's come back and look at suspension. Dynamic loading. So 22, 4, and 26. So again, we're still a little hot in the back end. And if you come over into the chassis, we're about 15 inches with the ballast forward, so that isn't too bad. I mean, I know a lot of people run like 40 inches. They just toss it all the way to the beginning, to the front, which isn't bad. It may be able to lessen the amount of front aerodynamics you need, which should increase your drag ratio. Well, that is later on down the road. But we can keep coming back here and taking a peek at these. And take another big swing at them. $14.52. $14.63. So we'll add another 1/10 of an inch or 100th of an inch, just to account for the softer spring squat. So we'll also do, excuse me, while we're doing that, come back to suspension positions and see where we are going through this corner here. Average front ride height. It looks like we're right, just almost scraping, which is perfect. So that front ride height is bueno. And then the rear ride height, 417. But what we really care about with this rear ride height is this number right here. It's going to change the front downforce percentage too, but that's fine. What we need to do is figure out the proper rake. And as you can see, the higher up you go, you hit a peak. All right. And 31, 35, 38, 41, 45, 47, 47, 47, 46. Okay. So here's a little nuance of this. So the most efficient rake in the car is like 0.52 something to 0.5, what is that, 3 something, or whichever. Those two things. And you can see the front downforce range that it gives you. Okay, 45.2 to 45.35. So luckily we're in the same ballpark as far as we start messing around with the rear ride heights. We are going to be in the same ballpark as the front downforce goes. So right now, what we know is that where we are here, or I should say, we need, what was that? I don't want to do that. Was that 44 and a half or something? Is that where we were? Yeah, it was down in the 44s. But at any rate, so now we know that the optimal is, where'd you go? There you go. Is that. So what did that mean for us is that we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking to get that back to 44 front downforce. So that's always on, that's always off. So let's go back down to, well, I think we were like 44 and a half. So that should help. And here's the thing too, like even if you move these around, the optimal rake is still going to be the same. Okay. Or very, very close to it. So just so you know, you're not going to be chasing your tails. All right, so 9-0. So now what we do is we know that 403 is actually the front right height. So let's go back in here and tweak this. Meet 406. It's still the same. Let's come down a little bit. And because like I said, we need to get back up to, well, it does peak it just a little bit. So that's where we're on the front right height. This is now the target rear right height. So what we're going to do is we're going to see, like, all right, we're 0.6. We're going to come back into iRacing, and we're going to start cranking up the rear right heights because now we have a target to hit. And like I said, I like to keep the preloads a little bit the same, a little bit positive. So believe it or not, I honestly don't think that's going to be enough. Oops, wrong way. I like nice round numbers. Let's take it up to 7. Let's crank it up to 7, man. And we're still good back and forth on that. And the front right height should be the same. So let's go back to test. And I got to go back to full screen mode here. So that you may see a blank screen here for a second. The frame rates drop is just too crazy. It's like 49, 45 in windowed mode. And then as soon as we pop in here, it's over 100, 120. Now we have less downforce on the car, so we gotta be real careful. And in the world of IndyCar, less amount of downforce you can have and still control the car, the better it is, because the faster you go. So in the words of the late great Michael Hunt, how much courage you have depends on how big your legs are. If you've never seen that interview, it's hilarious. It's a short little clip. Someone's asking you, like, how can you essentially do what you do and things like that. Like, big bolts. I just really wish that I'd have been old enough to enjoy F1. See those classic battles and rivalries and things like that. You know, like I even missed out on setup. You know, that was what, the 80s and 90s. Since my past. I think the more that you reflect on all those old battles that the rivalries that you didn't get to see, or you learn to identify the ones that you have now and really relish in it. You know, like Vettel and Hamilton. Like that's, we're going to be talking about this rivalry so hard to use his car in the last one. And really screwed himself once. I don't think that it's lost on me that we're losing time. but we're trying to hit other goals first. It's like you had to break a few eggs to make an omelet. One step forward, or yeah, one step backwards, 2 steps forwards. That's kind of what we're doing. Because like I said, we're taking downforce away, but that's allowing us to maximize and optimize the mechanical grip, which is overall a good thing. So we're doing two things at the same time. We're taking away, we're figuring out where the optimal center of pressure is, and we're taking away downforce so we can maximize the amount of mechanical grip that we have in the car. So we can come back over here, 46, 36, so we're starting to get that push back in, which isn't all that bad, but I don't think it's aero this time. So let's come out of full screen mode. Sorry about the blackness. If it actually happened. So, all right. So here we are again. Usually the second one in here is the one with the most laps. But sometimes it isn't. All right, so you look at the rear ride height now average. We popped that up, and the increase in the downforce just a little bit, and the efficiency. I mean, it's a little bit increase in the downforce, but it's just scraping here, going through turns 3, and we are now a little higher up as far as that average rear ride height. So we're getting close to our target. Still not there yet, which is 0.937. So we'll come back in here. Do like 9. Okay. And then we'll also, while we're at it, come in here and double check. 23, 2250, okay. I think that's where we were. I gotta move this over to the side there, and so I can see. Stop. Yeah, left rear 2250, and then 2300. And so now we'll get a little better understanding. Hey, look at that. So we're better. We're now really damn close over here on the dynamic side of the house. And I'm going to move this out of the way real quick. And just to double check and make sure that I got all the proper spring rates in telemetry programmed in. Left front 2750, left rear 2250. Right front 2750, and then 2300. Yes, okay. Awesome sauce. So, close that. I'll bring this back over here. All right, so here we are on the left hand, or on the right hand side in turn 3. And it's probably going to be just about the same all the way through. So, that's good. So we're getting there. We can still probably come down more on the left rear. And maybe a tick more on the right rear. So that big change down to 98. Close enough. And then just 100 pounds over there. Bring that back up. there. Okay. Now, as we go along this setup process, we're going to come back in here and we're going to see through these corners, like the rear ride height, the roll seems not that bad. The front roll doesn't seem to be rolling over and flattening out a lot, but we'll come back and we'll start taking a peek at that because we have a wonderful thing called chassis roll. So we'll see. And I'm not quite sure if I still have the formula accurate. I don't use this page that much anymore, but I had a formula to calculate the front roll that took into consideration the aerodynamics downforce on the car too. So I know that that the piece of information that I need, the variable that I need to actually make that calculate properly is I didn't update it. But it gives you enough of a ballpark to see that the front outrolls the back, and that comes right into play with, you can see that the front here and the back, yeah, there's more. No. 0.2, 0.2. Maybe it's the same. Like I said, that formula has to be updated. But at any rate, you know, I like trying to get these things a little flat, but maybe a little up, maybe 0.2, maybe work a little bit. It's something else you can have to make a mental note to experiment with exactly how much roll do you want going through the corner. Do you want the car flat, or do you want a little more of an angle of attack bit? And just thinking of it from an aerodynamic standpoint, if you have it rolled over like that, it should be pulling you through the corner a little better, but we'll see. At any rate, so we went down on those, and go back to the full screen resolution here, and we'll go back on this. Somebody's happens to be watching this for one of the first times, and I'm gonna post this. Matter of fact, takes a long time to explain things versus just doing it yourself. So I've been streaming for like 2 hours. Right? The actual process is much faster. And then number 2, like I always say, the more you learn about the car, the easier it is to make these changes. You don't have as much trial and error in the process. So like I say, as soon as you go with your notebook and you know what the optimal tire pressures are for Phoenix, you just make the adjustments and you just order pressure adjustments and you just hit those targets. That's it. Awesome. Let's take a look. 46.37, you're just getting a little bit better. You still want the right front always, just a little, people say 5 to 10 degrees hotter than the right rear. That's playing it safe. That means that when the car starts falling off, it's at least going to fall off into a more stable way than into a way that the car just wants to swap ends and kill you. So keep that in mind. Like a 5 to 10 degree difference isn't as detrimental to the fall off of the performance of the car in lap times, as 50 degree difference. 50 degree difference, you're massive foot. All right, so 0.993 is where we're at. 0.478 is where we are up front, and as you can see, the front skid plate, we haven't really hit anything negative. But we could go down a little more. Oh, wait. We were cattywampus there. Out of the way. Okay. There we go. So we're just skipping. This is the beginning of the run. Don't forget. And as the fuel burns off, the car gets lighter. The car is going to lift up off the ground. So, muy bueno. The average rear ride height, I think we may have overshot a little bit. But we can go back in. We can say, all right, 397 and 994. 397 and 994. So we're a little high in the ass end. So we got the ass up a little too high. So now we can start bringing that back down. We'll do by 5 clicks. So if you don't know the shortcut, hold down shift and then click, and that will increase the increments by 5. So we're going to say that is that. Okay. Then as you come back in here, look at the dynamic loading. I'm going to bring this over to this other side so I can still look at the spring rates. Okay. So we brought everything down. So let's update these spring rates in telemetry. Okay. And so we put the new spring rates in, and there we go. Okay. So you see these average. So when we first started off, let me pull those up. When we first started this whole shindig off, we had the front worse than the back on that run. Oh, let's look at that run. 46, 49. and then we kind of went off by about 200. Oh, dang it. No. There. And there. So that was like 100, 100 pounds off, and now we're further back into the realm of there's the herd. Barking at anything. There. So now we are 30 pounds. So, yeah. Muy bueno. So, that's where I'm going to leave you guys off today. Chances are I will be back on Wednesday and maybe a little bit on Thursday. I'm hosting a bachelor party at my house for my buddy. And then Friday morning I should be back and finishing this up to the point where it'll be what I'm going to be taking into the race at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. So I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And hope you subscribe if you like it. And like I said, any questions, any what the heck, any constructive criticism, if there's a big difference between like disagreeing with an approach that I have and saying, and being crappy about it, and making a good criticism of the stream, or if I'm doing something wrong and you say, if I'm saying A is right and you come in and you say B is right, you need to be able to go semi-reference places to go and study it, because if you come in and say, I've been around race cars for 20 years and this is right, I don't believe you. Sorry. I don't believe you. Like, I know where my knowledge came from, and my knowledge came from a lot of research and different stuff like that, and people that I know are turn wrenches on cars, and I've watched them work on their race cars, and I've seen what they do, and I've seen where they come from, and I see that the background knowledge that they have and where they got that background knowledge. So I have no qualms about being told being shown that I'm inaccurate. But like I said, you better be able to back it up with, if this is wrong because of these reasons, and they better be verifiable, and they're not anecdotal, not anything like that. But if I'm doing something wrong and it's fundamentally wrong, and you can prove that, I have no problem in saying, hey guys, I was wrong. Thanks to so and so for pointing it out. This is what he said. This is the reference material that they referenced, and correct myself. I have no problem with that. But all right, so I hope you learned something. I hope this helps out a little bit. Like I said, the beginning process of setup building is long and it's involved, especially if you don't have any starting point or any knowledge, anything like that. So that's what I'm hoping these tutorials do. They give people something that they can watch in their spare time and start slowly wrapping their head around setups and how vehicle dynamics works, and why race cars do what they do and how they do it. And it gives you a little more comfort in starting in your understanding, and inspire you to get into open setup races, because for me, this is most of the fun. Like, racing's fun, but like I love this aspect, this technical aspect of it, and then seeing the product on track. Like that is a massive reward. So with that, I'm gonna leave you guys, and I hope you guys have a great day, and good luck to everybody doing the soft race tonight in the IndyCars. Have fun. Wish I was there. And if you like the stream, subscribe to the channel. You'll get all the updates. And that should be it for today. So thank you guys very much. I really, really appreciate it. And you guys have a great day. And I'll see you on Wednesday, hopefully.